You live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
There's a line between
No, I have no problem. No, I have no problem coming back with an update. That
Yeah,
would be.
basically
I'd
it's
love
just a
to-
status meeting. It's a status meeting
I
to
got you.
reassure, the board has been handling this. Alderman Foy, will you lead us in prayer this evening?
Let's pray. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this beautiful day you've given us, Lord. We just pray that we come together tonight, that we seek your will and your opinion to do. Father, I thank you for the blessings you bestowed upon the city of Pearl and its workers. I pray that you continue to watch over us, guide us, and keep us safe. Father, I also ask that you please just forgive us for what we've done. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
Alderman McHenry, will you lead us in the pledge, please? Sure.
Approval of consent agenda items. All items under this heading will be considered to be approved with one motion and one vote. If further discussion is desired on any item, it will automatically be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered as a general business item.
Item number 22 has already been moved to general business. Would that be a known? Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
Second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Public hearing number 1, consider request by Heritage Mississippi LLC to grant a conditional use permit to operate a mortuary crematory facility at 4327 Old Brandon Road, Pearl, Mississippi 39208.
We've already discussed this during the work session, but just to provide transparency and information to our citizens that are watching, I'm going to ask the gentleman to come back up and provide his presentation again.
Good evening again. My name is Mark Aaron. I work as the Vice President of Acquisitions and Transitions for Heritage Family Funeral Services. We are a firm rooted in history. We're 70-plus years old as a company, and we own and operate funeral homes, cemeteries, and crematories throughout 11 states in the southeast, primarily in the southeast area. We have a number of firms in Mississippi, one of which is Greater Jackson Mortuary Service here, or presently in Jackson, Mississippi. We are looking to move our mortuary and crematory to Pearl at this address that we're requesting the conditional use permit for. I was specific earlier in the working session I want people of the community to know that this is not a funeral home. So there is not the regular funeral services and the traffic involved with that. We provide two specific services, embalming and caring for the deceased and cremating the deceased human beings. We do not cremate pets within our operations here in Jackson. Although we do own pet crematories, that is not our intent for this building. We're looking for this conditional use permit to be able to move from Jackson to Pearl. For us, it will operationally provide us some synergies that we're looking for, because right now our operations are in two different buildings, and it's important for us to move that under one rooftop.
Some of the concerns earlier, Sammy, I think you asked a question about if there's smoke. This organization has to be in compliance with EPA standards.
We do, yes. Yes, we follow all EPA standards, both federally and those set forth by the state of Mississippi as well. Smoke is a concern to us as well as it would be to the neighbors, but I know from experience with the operating of the crematories that we have, the actual crematory units or machines as they're called, they're manufactured so that they meet the EPA specifications, and the opacity that's discharged is typically a heat vapor, not smoke. So that hopefully that will clarify things.
I think the other question that Alderman McHenry talked about the building, and you explained to us that it was going to be a nice building, aesthetically pleasing, that you are going to have a very nice build out.
Yes.
I know this is pretty preliminary just from today, because you don't have any renderings or anything like that.
That's correct.
Is there an idea of what type of building material?
Yeah, building material wise, as I mentioned earlier, I met with a contractor today, Jeff Peoples, and started to do some work with him. We had looked at a footprint that I provided to him, and it would be a combination of a metal building. The exterior portions of that would certainly be stone, whether it be stone or brick or whatever. So it would have accents of both.
So, not displaying metal, you saying that the cover of it would be brick material or stone, correct?
Not the entire building. A portion of the building that would house the offices, the staff area, that would be stone or brick material. And then the balance of that can be a metal building. As I said, it's not a funeral home per se, so it would have some different construction to it just for our efficiencies.
So I'm gonna try to help you out on the front end here. We've raised our standards, our architectural standards. So now it doesn't have to be Lower Manhattan, but we do want to make things look nice.
Sure.
So the front and the display of it to Old Brandon Road is what I think, I don't want to speak for everybody on the board here, but that's probably going to be their greatest concern, nice building material.
Sure.
We can work with people because we understand the amount of inflation of building costs, and it's metal involved, but we do want it to look nice from Old Brandon Road.
Yeah, and as we get to the point of that rendering, I'm happy to provide that
Yeah, that'd be
to
nice.
the council here. Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Question. Nothing about it.
Mhm.
I know we talked about smoke. What about, I'm assuming the incinerator has filters as far as smell.
Yes. Yes, it does. Yeah.
There should be any
No, there should not be any odor emitted from that building at all. Any waste left as far as? Typically, when a cremation is completed, all cremations are one person at a time. There's never dual cremations that are taking place in the same crematory. And when the cremation is done, all of the cremated material that's left from that human body is removed from that chamber. It's collected, and then it's placed in an urn or some type of container that would go back to the funeral home or the family. So for us, that becomes the funeral home that we're cremating for, that's contracting with us to complete the cremation. That cremation would go back to the funeral home. They would have the responsibility to return that to the family. So for us, there would never be any unclaimed cremated remains in our building because, again, we don't deal directly with families, we deal directly with funeral homes.
Any additional questions for this gentleman? Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Is anybody here to speak in opposition to this? The presentations that the gentleman just put before the board? If not, the board entertain a motion to approve. So moved. Discussion. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it.
General business number 1, discuss the status of structure located at 2521 Highway 80 from Mississippi 39208.
I'll let you approach the podium again. Just discussing your plans. We've revisited this on several occasions, so I think for the viewing audience, sir, if you could again talk about building material, where you want to place it, square footage, kind of what the overall game plan is, so people in the city of Pearl will know what you're going to be constructing at that location.
Thank you. Again, Teddy Gibson, representing the car lot. We were here 60 days ago at the March 7th meeting and gave an update, and I provided the city with an outline. And so the status from 60 days ago is we've completed and received the flood certificate, so we now know the elevation to meet the codes for the FFE, the base of the first floor elevation. We have shot grades, so we know the height that we're going to need and the amount of dirt. We've engaged Benchmark Engineering, which is familiar to the city, to do the site plan. I'm taking a look at that. We have building plans, which the city has a copy of. We've already applied for the building permit, and copies of that has been submitted to the city, and the anticipation is that we're going to be an approximate 1,250 square foot building on the west side of the property. It will be it'll be a metal structure building, but it'll be clad on the public sides of the street, on the north side facing Highway 80 and on the east side facing the lot with brick or stone. So it'll be built on a slab, underground plumbing, electrical tied into the sewer. The aesthetically, like we've discussed with community development, aesthetically it'll tie in with existing property adjacent to us and across the street. So we want to be a good neighbor to the city.
Yeah. Just to streamline the process, gentlemen, I think Alderman McHenry expressed his concern of wanting to make sure we had like a status update meeting in July, just to make sure that we're flowing exactly the way we've discussed as far as
That'd be great.
construction is concerned. So we're just going to reset our meeting. I'll let Madam Clerk take a look at that, and so you guys can have the accurate date.
Table to July 5th. Are we tabling it?
Take similar action on what we did last time.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
there's no vote. Similar to what last time we tabled to this meeting.
so just for clarification here, the board understands that you're proceeding forward to construct the building. This is us just checking in, making sure that everything's going forward because this particular current building has a conditional use on it.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
And it's July the 5th. Right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Consider in order to accept the revised preliminary plat for Shadow Ridge subdivision and confirming the 25-foot rear buffer for lot 21-332, and further acknowledging any future request of a 5-foot front variance for said lots on the final plat for a net 30 feet from rear property line.
Brendan, I'm gonna let you handle this as far as discussion of this particular general business item. We have discussed it with concerning parties within previous work session, but if the viewing audience wants to know, or if somebody was not in the room, then let's just readdress what we're doing with this item.
Okay, so essentially the board approved it 2 meetings ago on the preliminary plat, and there was discussion of it, but it was left off the final plat, right? Or the plat that was filed. So what we're here doing is correcting the error, and there's going to be a revised plat submitted that reflects the 25-foot buffer. Inside that 25-foot buffer, we cannot approve any variance on the dimension, which ultimately would be moving the house 5 foot forward, because that'd be on the final plat. This is just a preliminary for them to initiate and start doing the dirt work. We did talk about in the work session the maintenance and the way it runs. Our zoning ordinance does address it additionally, and this is additional information from what we spoke about in the work session, but our zoning ordinance references specifically when R1 abuts an RE, and this is that situation because the neighbors to the south of this property are RE, and this is an R1 development, and it talks about how the buffer remains, and ultimately it's the responsibility of the owner to maintain it, but it can't be abandoned, paved, contoured, or otherwise for any other purpose than the screening, and that's protected in the zoning ordinance already. In addition to whatever future restriction the city may put on a final plat approval.
Okay, so the buffer will run up to the public property, all the owners on that side.
Right, so where it is, if you look at Shadow Ridge, this is that south boundary, and that lot 21 runs to 32, and it's gonna run along that south boundary. So it's gonna run to the property line, right? And then property line north, because it's the south boundary, and it's gonna be that 25 foot. But yes.
So do we need to address the RE that touches the R1 on the north side of that road? Not only one we're talking about now, it abuts on the other side of the road also.
You're talking about on the north side.
I don't know about anything about that. Nobody's mentioned any of those lots. The concern that was initially discussed was that south boundary.
Right.
And it's specifically these lots. And that's why we're going the entire southern boundary of Shadow Ridge. And that's what, and it's greater than what, the restriction is it's greater than what is imposed in the ordinance itself, right? It's a 10-foot buffer as opposed to the ordinance from R1 meets RE. And so the board and the developer, they're good with the 25-foot to create it and maintain it.
What I'm saying is that in the ordinance,
What?
that you got a minimum of 10-foot buffer?
Oh, yeah.
So it should be one on the north side too.
Yeah, the buffer runs all the way around. The only thing we're talking about specifically, sorry, I misunderstood. The only thing we're talking about specifically is the 25 is going to be on the southern border. That's correct, because the minimum is all the way around, there's a 10-foot buffer all the way around, right? Because it follows the zoning ordinance, and, you know, our engineers have confirmed it meets the minimum requirements of the zoning ordinance. What this is a greater requirement placed on them to increase that buffer there.
But we approved the plot that said 30 and no variances. So if we approve this and we won't make the 30, and then we'll be asking for variances.
No, ultimately, what was approved was that the plat that was provided was an error, and so it included the 30, was discussion, you're right. And there were no variances initially requested, but they would
So now
request
they'll be requesting.
on these specific lots, they would ask to move up these houses 5 foot, because the setback in R1 is 30 off the front line. They would be asking for a 5-foot variance, which would benefit those property owners as well, because it's going to move the house 5 foot north as well. But that specifically on those lots, 31 feet.
Thank you, sir.
Or is there any more questions? Is there a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
No.
Let's start on this. I didn't hear anybody. The ayes have it, motion carries.
Understand on claims documents, we do not have any claims for Pickering or Benson,
that will be, and so that's a form of a motion right there. Is there a second? Second, all right. Discussion on that matter is they will be at the next board meeting. And if it's okay for this board, just to accommodate time and further discussion, we usually have our work sessions at 5:15. I'd like to start it at 5 and bring them in. That way we have a little bit longer time and just so we don't run over when we're handling other items that are on the agenda itself. Okay? All right, so
Tell them where they're still no
I'll make sure you pray before they come in here. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. As always, we come into the portion of the meeting where we adjourn in memory of people that recently passed away within the city of Pearl. And unfortunately, we have a long list tonight. Our senior center has been hit hard. Patsy Warrington just recently passed away. Catherine Clark, Samuel Lester, Jesse Wells, and Jewel Thomas. Is there any additional names that we'd like to recognize tonight out of service? Please let the board know at this time. All right, something that I want to say, our hearts and prayers go out to these families. We always want to make sure that we make much of these people that were made in God's image, and they are family members of others. So that's why we do it, each board member. But something particular too is affecting their families greatly at this time with the passing of their loved ones. Something that I've noticed, and Stacy shared with me too, that at the senior center, it affects everybody within that senior center as well. All those other elderly people see their good friends pass away, so it's tough at times. But thank God we have a living hope, right? So at this time, I would appreciate if there is a motion to adjourn in these people's names. All right, there's two motions on the floor. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.